We are ECS Outdoors, East Central Saskatchewan's guide to faith, family, farm, and a whole lot of fun. Alright, welcome to episode number 8, titled East Central Saskatchewan. I'm excited to do this podcast because it's kind of that idea of we've done an intro to the company that we're affiliated with, Tween Lakes Feed Solutions and Tween Lakes Farm. We've done an intro to who we are as a family in regards to the seasons, and so now I want to talk a little bit about East Central Saskatchewan on this episode. And East Central Saskatchewan is a geographic location in East Central Saskatchewan, which reaches as far south as Yorkton, Saskatchewan, all the way up to Nipawin, Saskatchewan, to the Manitoba border, all the way towards Melfort, towards the west. So that is kind of the geographic idea, which is quite flexible because people by Melfort might consider themselves Central Saskatchewan. So it's kind of one of those things where you can sort of identify as Central or Eastern or whatever you want. But for our intended purposes, our geographic location is Nipawin to Yorkton to Melfort to the Manitoba border. And so if you find yourself in that square, we're going to talk about what is this countryside all about. And in this episode, we want to talk about the places to have fun. Because, well, it's winter time, it's been kind of cold, and now the weather has warmed up here. We're in mid-January. I believe the date today is the 15th. So if you want to call that mid-January, that's pretty much January 15th. So I want to talk about a few things here, but first, let's go into God's Word quickly. Hebrews chapter 11. We're going to read from... And so, chapter 11, verse 12 to verse 14. And so, from this one man, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, as countless as the sands on the seashore. All these people were living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. So that's kind of the context to that one, is talking about the promised land, and that was Abraham that we were reading about there, as he was told that his descendants would be in the numbers, the stars in the sky, and that they would have vast kingdom. And the men leading up from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their offspring never actually got to go to the promised land, and but they died dreaming of that promised land. And so we're talking about looking forward at things that are promised to us. And this land that we live in right now is not the promised land. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Where we live here, when it's not minus 40, it is beautiful. When it's minus 40, it's not a nice place to be. So if you imagine a promised land where we never have to worry about that, we don't have to worry about bugs, we don't have to worry about disease, we don't have to worry about dying, we don't have to worry about any of that. That is the real promised land, and we will talk more about that in another episode at some point. That is the real promised land. But where we live right now, East Central Saskatchewan, is pretty awesome. And I want to talk a bit about this so-called land that we live in right now. We're living in an area here that has provincial parks, regional parks, provincial forests, you name it when it comes to beautiful places to live. We live in the parkland area, which is a fringe of agricultural land that is bordered by a vast forest to the north, that it goes as far north as the tundra. So we're right on the fringe of the south and right on the fringe of the north. And so it's only fitting that this area is a oasis of wildlife. You go south of Yorkton a little ways, and you're gonna find pheasants. You're gonna find there's actually, if you go into the Capel Valley somewhere over there south of Yorkton, you're gonna find a small number of wild turkeys if you're lucky enough to see them. There's no hunting season for turkeys in Saskatchewan, which is we just don't have enough of them. Maybe by the time I'm 50, 60 years of age, there'll be enough wild turkeys to have a turkey hunting season, but we're not going to talk about that now. We want to talk about East Central Saskatchewan, and we've noticed here in East Central Saskatchewan a migration of mule deer, and they've actually introduced a hunting season now because the migration has grown so much. And we were actually just on the road here this last week, and we were driving home from we were up at Tobin Lake, Saskatchewan, fishing, where the world record walleye was caught in 2005. And I promised you guys on the last podcast that I would catch a new world record. I guess I'm not good at keeping my promises, but we caught a few fish, which was as good as we could hope for. So that's fishing for you. You can't guarantee nothing. I tried to, but I failed. So yeah, we came back from Tobin Lake, and when we were driving home, we saw a pile of mule deer, which is something I would have said 15 years ago. If you saw a mule deer in this area, wow, that's a rare occurrence. But now there's lots of mule deer around here. So we saw moose, lots of whitetail deer, and that's we live in this part of the world. We did not see an elk. I saw an elk last week when my wife and I were on a little bit of a vacation there. We saw an elk north of Prince Albert, which is Central Saskatchewan. So we're not going to talk about Central Saskatchewan. We're going to talk about East Central Saskatchewan. And so East Central Saskatchewan has provincial parks like Good Spirit Provincial Park, Madge Lake Provincial Park, Greenwater Provincial Park. Okay, so those are all provincial parks within this area, and you can camp there in summertime, and they've got seasonal lots and just a, if you like camping in the summertime, these are the places to go, because there's activities galore at these places. So the boating at these lakes, Greenwater, Madge, and I guess Madge Lake is not Madge Lake Provincial Park, it's Duck Mountain Provincial Park. So there's a ski hill at Duck Mountain, so that's kind of fun. You can't do that in the summertime, but there's hiking like crazy there for anybody that loves hiking. All these places have got things for families to do, and some of the places that you go to aren't necessarily provincial parks. There's the provincial forest up north, Porcupine Forest. There's snowmobile trails up in the forest up there, and lots of people go quadding up there in summertime. And it is an oasis here in East Central Saskatchewan to explore. So one of the things that we're doing really well in East Central Saskatchewan is our snowmobile trails. There are hundreds of miles of snowmobile trails that are groomed. There's a growing number of snowmobile clubs out there, and those snowmobile trails intersect one another. And so you can actually go from East Central Saskatchewan all the way across Saskatchewan up into Alberta on connected trails. You can go as far south almost as the U.S. border, up into the greater northern forests, up towards Nipawin, and it's all interconnected. As long as you plot your trails out well, so you can have your gas stops and your hotel stays. If you're a hardcore winter camper, that's up to you to have the proper equipment to stay warm, and cook your own food. It can be done, but not something I would ever do. People do have a lot tougher skin than I do when it comes to camping outdoors. I heard a story this week about some people that went ice fishing. It was minus 47 with the wind chill, and they were on snowmobiles, and they thought that they could have a tent where they could sit on the ice fishing, and have a propane burner keeping their tent warm. Well, when it's minus 30 or colder, propane actually turns to liquid and will not burn in these small little burners. That was a problem. They ended up snowmobiling back to where they came from without having a chance to warm up, and they ended up with some severe frostbite. That is the dangers of the winter, and not necessarily preparing yourself for the conditions that we have. Now, today, of all days, January 15th, it is -1 outside right now, and it is the day to go on a snowmobile trail for hours upon hours. It's a perfect week if you're going to do that winter camping snowmobile trip. This is the week to do it. And you know what? There are more weeks to come. February, March are beautiful months to get out and explore. Those months can also turn cold, so be prepared with the forecast if you're going to be out there doing that. So this is kind of the story that we want to talk about, this promised land. And East Central Saskatchewan is not the promised land. East Central Saskatchewan is a beautiful land, and I just, I'm happy to live here. I'm happy to have places like Tobin Lake to go to, like Good Spirit, Shallow Lake. You can go out and walk half a mile almost into the lake and be up to your hips in water, and sometimes it's only up to your shins at that distance of a walk. There are deeper areas in the lake where there's good walleye fishing and pike fishing in that lake. But I haven't put a boat on that lake because I don't know the way the lake works. You don't want to go into an area where you're going to maroon your boat up on the sandbar, which that's the way Good Spirit works. And Greenwater, it's one of those lakes where there's a lot of people up at Greenwater, and it's a green water. It's a green lake. There's like an algae bloom that happens there quite frequently. And but the long and the short of it is, it's a warmer body of water, and lots of people flock to that body of water to go and enjoy it. And when the water is clean, it's beautiful up there. And I've actually been on that lake with a boat, and it's a beautiful lake to boat in because it's a safe boating lake with lots of deep areas in the lake, so you're not worried about marooning your boat. And then Madge Lake in Duck Mountain Provincial Park is a beautiful lake too. There's some few shallower areas in there, but it's an easy lake to navigate with a boat. We've spent lots of time up there tubing, and when it's 30 plus degrees in the summertime, it's a great lake. It's clean. You can jump in the water and really have a good time when it's warm out. And so that's the lakes in those provincial parks that I'm familiar with. Madge Lake, if you know where to catch the fish, people catch fish in Madge Lake really well. I've caught fish from shore at Good Spirit, It can be a good lake, but that's a very, very warm lake, and the fish meat is definitely, it has a different flavor to it than the colder body lakes, and some people like it, some people don't, and that's just how it is. I'm more of a cold water fish kind of guy, if that makes any sense to you listeners. But Madge Lake, if you get a fish from Madge Lake, it's a little cooler body of water, and the fish taste excellent out of there. I've never caught a fish at Greenwater, so I can't say from experience what those fish taste like. And I talked a little bit about Tobin Lake. That's actually on the North Saskatchewan River. And the fish that come out of there, if you're catching smaller ones, it's a slot lake too. It's a fisheries program there where you're the size of fish you have to throw back if they're over a certain size, and you're only allowed to keep 3 eaters per person out of that lake, and you know, that's not a big deal if you're up there to spend some time and have some fish fries and stuff like that, because you can eat as much fish as you can catch most of the time when you got a family of 3 or 4. I mean, it's pretty easy to eat your catch day after day when you're up there. And that being said, with Tobin Lake's fish, the smaller fish, like say 14-inch walleye, are just awesome eaters. Actually, in the wintertime right now, my son caught a 21-inch walleye, and we were like, what's this fish gonna taste like? Because it's right at the top end of the slot size, like 21 3/4 of an inch you have to throw back. So in this particular case here, we kept this 21-incher, and being that it's wintertime, it tasted awesome. In summertime, when the water's a little warmer, I think it would have actually had a bit more of a softer tissue, more slewy flavor is a term. I don't know if that fish would have tasted that good, but it tasted excellent, and it's one of those things where winter fishing, ice fishing, is something that we just did for the first time here this year. We ended up going and getting a little ice fishing sonar, and we watched the fish on the bottom with this sonar, and we could tell that we were in the right spot. There were lots of fish there, but they just weren't wanting to bite. And they said it's low pressure system. The weather warmed up. It was -30 last week. Now it's +1 or -2. The fish don't like to bite when there's a quick weather change like that. That's part of being in East Central Saskatchewan. You never know what the weather's going to be like from week to week, and we picked a nice week to be out on the lake. Not such a nice week to catch fish, but they said if the sun was shining, that's the people at the lake. They said if the sun was shining, we would have caught lots of fish, but the sun didn't shine. We had just clear or cloudy weather the whole time. So that's my little story for you guys on our fishing experience on the lakes that are in East Central Saskatchewan, the snowmobile trails that are out there, the beautiful landscape that we have here. It is a rolling topography in East Central Saskatchewan. This is not flat land. We have hills that we farm that you could roll a tractor over if you aren't careful. Saskatchewan is not a flat, barren landscape like so many people in the world or in Canada think it is. We have many mountains, Duck Mountain Provincial Park, as per the provincial park there, with a ski hill. So that's what we live in here in East Central Saskatchewan. Thank you so much for listening to podcast number 8. Just a reminder that this promised land is not the promised land. It's beautiful nonetheless. But thanks again for listening. Check out our Facebook page, Tween Lakes Feed Solutions, and www.tweenlakesfeedsolutions.com. And thank you to our sponsor, Tween Lakes Farm. And thank you also for listening. Over and out.